At 20:47 a.m., every single person on Maple Street was standing in their front yard, smiling at me through my windshield. I was driving home from my late shift at the hospital, taking my usual route through downtown when construction forced a detour. The orange signs led me deeper into an area I'd never seen before, even though I'd lived in this city for 3 years. My phone had died hours earlier, so I couldn't use GPS. The neighborhood looked normal at first. Clean sidewalks, well-maintained houses, the kind of suburban street where kids probably rode bikes during the day. But something felt off. Every house had its porch light on, every single one, and in each lit window, I could see the faint outline of someone standing there, perfectly still. I slowed down, thinking maybe there was some kind of emergency, a gas leak, maybe, that had forced everyone outside. But as I drove past the first few houses, I noticed the people weren't looking around anxiously or talking to each other, like you'd expect during an evacuation. They were all facing the street, facing my car. At the first house, a man in pajamas stood on his lawn. He raised his hand and waved at me. Normal enough, except his smile was too wide, unnaturally wide, like someone had stretched his mouth with their fingers. I waved back instinctively, but my stomach clenched. The second house had a woman with 2 children flanking her sides. All 3 wore the same expression, that impossibly wide smile. They waved in perfect unison, their movements mechanical and synchronized. By the third house, my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. An elderly couple stood arm in arm, their smiles so broad, I could see their gums gleaming in the porch light. When they waved, their arms moved with jerky, puppet-like motions. I pressed the accelerator, trying to get through the neighborhood faster, but there were more houses ahead, and at each one, more people. Men, women, children, all standing on their lawns like sentries, all wearing that horrible, stretched smile, all waving. The strangest part wasn't just the smiles or the synchronized waving. It was how their eyes never blinked. Not once. I watched carefully as I passed house after house, and not a single person blinked. Their eyes stayed wide open, reflecting the street lights like glass. My heart hammered as I approached what looked like the end of the street. Just a few more houses and I'd be out of this nightmare. But as I got closer to the last house, I saw something that made me slam on the brakes. A small girl, maybe 7 years old, stood in the middle of the road. She wore a white nightgown that seemed to glow under the street light. Her arms hung at her sides, and her head was tilted at an impossible angle, nearly touching her shoulder. But she was smiling too. That same wide, unnatural smile. I honked my horn gently, hoping she'd move. She didn't. She just stood there, smiling, her head cocked to the side like a broken doll. I honked again, louder this time. Nothing. That's when I noticed the movement in my peripheral vision. All the people from all the houses were walking toward my car. Not running, walking, but in perfect synchronization, like they were marching to a beat only they could hear. Their smiles never wavered. Their eyes never blinked. I threw the car in reverse and hit the gas. The tires squealed as I backed away from the little girl and the approaching crowd. But as I turned to look behind me, more people were emerging from houses I'd already passed. They filled the street behind me too, walking in that same eerie unison. I was trapped. The crowd closed in from both directions, and I realized they weren't making any sound. No footsteps on asphalt, no voices, nothing. Just the soft whisper of fabric against fabric as they moved. The silence was worse than screaming would have been. I spotted a narrow gap between 2 houses and gunned the engine, jumping the curb and tearing across someone's lawn. My car bounced violently as I crashed through flower beds and garden decorations, but I didn't care. I had to get out. Behind me, I could see the crowd in my rearview mirror. They'd stopped walking and were standing in the middle of the street, watching my car disappear into the darkness. All of them still smiling, still not blinking. I drove for 20 minutes through winding back roads before I found a main street I recognized. My hands didn't stop shaking until I was safely inside my apartment with every door locked and every curtain drawn. The next morning, I drove back to find that neighborhood. I needed to know what I'd seen, needed to prove to myself it had really happened. But no matter how many times I took that same detour route, I couldn't find Maple Street. The roads led to different neighborhoods, different streets, places with normal names and normal people who blinked when they looked at you. I asked other hospital staff if they knew about a street called Maple in that area. Nobody did. I checked city maps, online directories, even old phone books. No Maple Street existed anywhere in that part of town. But sometimes, when I'm driving home late at night and I see people standing in their yards, I slow down to check their faces, just to make sure they're blinking, just to make sure their smiles are the right size. Because I've started to notice things about my own neighborhood, things that weren't there before. Like how Mrs. Henderson next door always seems to be watering her garden when I come home, no matter how late it is. And how she always waves. And how her smile seems a little wider than it used to be. Last week, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror and froze. For just a split second, I thought my own smile looked too wide. But when I looked again, it was normal. I hope it was normal. If I hadn't trusted that GPS voice telling me to turn left onto backwoods Route 127, my sister would still be alive. We were driving back from a wedding in rural Virginia, running later than planned, because the reception had gone past midnight. Sarah was asleep in the passenger seat, her bridesmaid dress wrinkled from the long day. I'd been driving for 3 hours straight, and my eyes were getting heavy, but I wanted to push through and get home. The GPS promised this route would save us 40 minutes. Turn left onto Route 127, the mechanical voice instructed, and I followed without thinking. The road immediately turned from smooth asphalt to rough gravel, then to dirt, but the GPS insisted this was correct. Continue straight for 18 miles, it said. The headlights cut through darkness, so complete it felt solid. No street lights, no house lights, no other cars. Just towering trees pressing in from both sides, their branches forming a canopy so thick that even moonlight couldn't penetrate. After about 10 miles, Sarah woke up. "Where are we?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. "Shortcut," I told her, but doubt was creeping in. The road kept getting narrower and rougher. Potholes jarred our teeth, and low-hanging branches scraped the roof of my sedan. "This doesn't look right," Sarah said, checking her phone. "I don't have any signal." Neither did I. The GPS had gone silent after that first instruction, showing only a blank gray screen. We were completely lost in the middle of nowhere. "Let's just turn around," Sarah suggested. I tried, but the road was too narrow. Thick trees and dense undergrowth pressed against both sides of the car. There was nowhere to turn around safely, and backing up 18 miles in complete darkness wasn't an option. "We'll keep going," I decided. "It has to lead somewhere." But it didn't. We drove for another hour, the road twisting deeper into what felt like primeval wilderness. The fuel gauge dropped steadily. My hands cramped from gripping the steering wheel as I navigated around rocks and fallen branches. That's when we saw the lights behind us. At first, it was just a faint glow in the rearview mirror. Sarah noticed it first. "Someone else is on this road," she said with relief. "Maybe they know the way out." But the lights didn't behave like normal headlights. They stayed exactly the same distance behind us, never getting closer, never falling back. When I slowed down, they slowed down. When I sped up, they matched my speed perfectly. "Flash your hazards," Sarah suggested. "Let them know we need help." I hit the hazard button, and immediately the lights behind us began flashing too. The same pattern, the same timing, like they were mocking us. Sarah rolled down her window and stuck her head out, waving her arms. "Help us!" she shouted into the darkness. "We're lost!" The lights behind us went out completely. We sat in terrible silence for several minutes, staring at the black void in our mirrors. Then, slowly, the lights came back on. But now there were more of them. At least 3 sets of headlights, all maintaining that same impossible distance behind us. "Drive faster," Sarah whispered. I pressed the accelerator, pushing my sedan as fast as I dared on the treacherous road. The speedometer hit 40, 45, 50 miles per hour. Behind us, the lights kept perfect pace. Then I heard the engines. Not car engines. These were deeper, rougher, like trucks or construction equipment. The sound echoed through the forest, seeming to come from all directions. But the lights in our mirrors remained steady and silent. "There," Sarah pointed ahead. "There's something up there." A structure emerged from the darkness. An old gas station, the kind that hadn't been updated since the 1960s. A single bare bulb hung over a pair of ancient pumps. The building looked abandoned, Windows dark, but smoke was rising from a chimney. I pulled up to the pumps, relief flooding through me. Someone could give us directions, tell us how to get back to civilization. Sarah and I got out of the car, stretching our cramped legs. That's when I realized the lights that had been following us were gone. The road behind us stretched empty into the darkness, but I could still hear those deep engine sounds coming from somewhere in the forest around us. A man emerged from the gas station office. He was tall and thin, wearing coveralls that might have been blue once but were now stained black with grease and other things I didn't want to identify. His face was mostly hidden under the brim of a baseball cap, but I could see his smile. Too many teeth, all of them pointed. "Y'all look lost," he said, his voice like gravel in a cement mixer. "We are," I admitted. "We're trying to get back to the interstate. Our GPS brought us down this road." "But GPS don't work out here," the man said, still smiling. "Lots of folks end up on this road. Most of them don't leave." Behind him, more figures were emerging from the shadows around the gas station. Men in similar coveralls, all wearing those same two wide smiles, all carrying tools that looked improvised and sharp. Sarah grabbed my arm. "We need to go," she whispered. But when I turned back toward our car, it wasn't there. The space where we'd parked was empty, except for scattered rust stains on the concrete. "Looking for something?" one of the men asked, and they all started laughing. It was a horrible sound, like hyenas with human voices. I grabbed Sarah's hand and we ran. Not toward the road we'd come from, that led nowhere, but into the forest. Branches tore at our clothes and faces as we crashed through the undergrowth. Behind us, I could hear the men following, but they weren't hurrying. They knew something we didn't. We ran for what felt like hours, stumbling over roots and rocks, until we saw lights ahead. The same gas station. We'd run in a circle. "That's impossible," Sarah gasped. We tried again, running in a different direction. But every path through the forest led back to that same gas station, where those men waited with their pointed teeth and sharp tools. On the fourth try, Sarah fell. She tripped over something in the darkness, a root, I thought, until I saw what it really was. A human leg bone, picked clean and white. "The forest won't let you leave," one of the men called out from somewhere in the darkness. "It's hungry, and it's been hungry for a long time." That's when they caught us. I won't describe what they did to Sarah. I won't describe the sounds she made or how long it took. I'll just say that when they were finished with her, they made me watch them drag her body to what looked like well behind the gas station. "Your turn," the tall man said to me. But something strange happened then. My phone, which had been dead for hours, suddenly lit up. A single bar of signal appeared, and a text message came through from an unknown number. "Run. Now. East." I didn't question it. I bolted into the forest, following what felt like an eastern direction. This time, the trees seemed to part before me. This time, the path led somewhere new. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out. When I finally collapsed, I could see highway lights in the distance. Real lights. Civilization. A trucker found me on the side of Interstate 64 at dawn, covered in scratches and babbling about a road that led nowhere. The police searched for Sarah based on my directions, but they never found Route 127, never found the gas station, never found any trace of where we'd been. The official report says Sarah probably fell into a river and drowned while we were hiking. They think grief and trauma made me imagine the rest, but I know what I saw. And sometimes, when I'm driving at night and my GPS suggests a shortcut down an unfamiliar road, I hear Sarah's voice warning me, "This doesn't look right. I always take the long way now." The deer was already dead when I hit it, and that's what saved my life. I need you to understand that first, because everything that happened next depends on that detail. The deer was dead, its body cold and stiff, when my car struck it at 60 miles per hour on that backwoods Montana highway at 11:43 p.m. I was driving home from a conference in Billings, running behind schedule because the last presentation had gone long. Instead of taking the main highway, I decided to cut through the mountains on Route 287, a winding 2-lane road that promised to shave an hour off my trip. The road carved through dense pine forest, dark and empty, except for the occasional long-haul trucker heading south. I had my high beams on, music playing softly, when I crested a hill and saw the deer standing in the middle of my lane. I slammed the brakes, but there was no time. The impact threw the deer's body up and over my hood, spider-webbing the windshield before it tumbled into the darkness behind me. My car skidded to a stop on the shoulder, steam rising from under the crumpled hood. My hands were shaking as I called 911, but there was no signal. Not surprising in these mountains. I'd have to drive to the next town for help, assuming my car was still drivable. I got out to assess the damage, and that's when I realized something was wrong. The deer's body lay about 30 feet behind my car, clearly visible in my taillights, but there was no blood on my bumper, no blood on the road, no blood anywhere. I walked back to examine the carcass, pulling out my phone's flashlight. The deer was a big buck, maybe 8 points, but its fur was dull and patchy. When I got closer, I could see why there was no blood. The deer was mummified. Its body was completely desiccated, like it had been lying in the desert for months. The eyes were gone, leaving empty sockets. The skin was pulled tight over the bones, hard as leather. This deer had been dead for a very long time, but I'd seen it standing in the road. I'd watched it move. A sound from the forest made me look up. Something was crashing through the trees about 50 yards away, moving toward the road. Moving toward me. I ran back to my car and locked the doors, heart hammering. The sounds got closer. Branches snapping, leaves rustling, like something large was pushing through the undergrowth. But whatever it was moved wrong. The sounds came in an odd rhythm, not like an animal walking or running, more like something dragging itself. My headlights illuminated about 40 feet of road ahead. At the very edge of that pool of light, something emerged from the tree line. It looked like a bear at first. Dark fur, massive shoulders, moving on all fours. But as it got closer, I could see it wasn't quite right. The proportions were off. The limbs were too long, and it moved with that same dragging motion I'd heard in the forest, like its legs weren't working properly. The thing shambled into my headlights, and I got a clear look at it. It was a bear, but like the deer, it was wrong. Ancient. Its fur was falling out in patches, exposing gray, withered skin. Its head hung at an unnatural angle, like its neck was broken. But it was moving, walking, even though everything about it screamed that it should have been dead for months. The bear thing turned its head toward my car, and I saw its eyes, or what should have been eyes. Just empty sockets, dark and hollow, yet somehow I could feel it looking at me. It started walking toward my car. I turned the key, praying the engine would start. It coughed, sputtered, then caught. I threw it in reverse, backing away from the approaching creature. But in my rearview mirror, I could see more shapes emerging from the forest behind me. A pack of wolves, maybe 6 or 7 of them, but all wrong like the bear. Some were missing patches of fur. Others had limbs that bent the wrong way. One was dragging its hindquarters because its back legs didn't work. But they were all moving, all hunting. I spun the wheel and accelerated forward, driving straight at the bear thing. It didn't move out of the way. My car hit it with a sickening crunch, but there was no blood, no gore. The impact just knocked the thing aside, where it rolled once and then got back up, still trying to reach me. Behind me, the wolf pack was giving chase, their broken bodies moving in that horrible dragging rhythm. I floored the accelerator, my damaged car lurching forward at maybe 40 miles per hour. For the next 10 miles, I kept checking my mirrors. The creatures had fallen behind, but I could still see their shapes in the distance, following the road. Following me, I reached the town of Garrison around midnight. The gas station was closed, but there was a phone booth outside. I called the police, told them about the accident, about needing a tow truck. "You hit a deer on 287, the dispatcher asked. "Yes, about 10 miles north of town." "Sir, there haven't been any deer on that stretch of road for 3 years. Not since the chemical spill." Chemical spill. Company truck carrying industrial preservatives went off the road in 21. Contaminated about 50 square miles of forest. Killed every living thing in the area. Fish, birds, mammals, everything. The cleanup crew said the chemicals basically mummified anything they touched. My blood went cold. What kind of preservatives? The kind that prevent decay. Keep organic matter from decomposing. Why? I didn't answer. I couldn't answer. Because I was starting to understand what I'd encountered on that road. The chemicals hadn't just killed the animals. They'd preserved them. Kept their bodies intact while something else, something hungry, moved in to inhabit them. The tow truck found my car the next morning, but there was no sign of the dead deer or any other animals. Just empty forest and a road that stretched into darkness. I never drove Route 287 again. But sometimes I wonder about those creatures, still shambling through that contaminated forest. Still hunting. Still following the road, looking for fresh meat to add to their collection. And sometimes, on dark nights when the wind is just right, I think I can hear them. That dragging rhythm, getting closer. The official report blamed wildlife for the damage to my car. But wildlife doesn't explain why my insurance company marked the claim as incident occurred in restricted zone, no coverage. I never asked what made that zone restricted. I was afraid they might tell me. I should have stayed on the main road, but I was late for my daughter's birthday party, and I thought I knew a shortcut. This was 3 months ago, but I still wake up in cold sweats thinking about what happened. I still check my locks twice every night. I still feel like someone's watching me. Let me explain. I was coming back from a work trip in Portland, driving my usual road on I-84 toward Boise, when traffic came to a complete standstill. A semi had jackknifed about 5 miles ahead, and radio reports said the highway would be closed for at least 3 hours. My daughter Emma was turning 7 that day. I'd already missed her morning party at school because of the business trip, and now I was going to miss her family celebration too. She'd been so excited, planning it for weeks, and I couldn't bear the thought of disappointing her again. I pulled out my phone and checked alternative routes. There was a state highway that cut through rural Oregon, adding maybe 30 minutes to the trip, but avoiding the traffic jam entirely. It looked straightforward enough, mostly straight roads through farmland. I took the next exit and headed south on Highway 19. For the first hour, everything went perfectly. Rolling hills, wheat fields, scattered farmhouses. The kind of peaceful rural scenery that makes you forget about city stress. I made good time and started to think I might actually make it to Emma's party on schedule. Then I missed a turn. I was supposed to take Highway 26 east toward Burns, but I was listening to a podcast and not paying attention to the GPS. By the time I realized my mistake, I was 20 miles down a smaller road heading deeper into empty country. The road was still paved but narrow, with no center line and tall grass growing right up to the edges. No farmhouses in sight, no other traffic. Just endless rolling hills under a gray afternoon sky. I looked for a place to turn around, but there were no driveways, no intersections, nothing. Just the road stretching ahead and behind. I figured I'd keep going until I found somewhere to turn around safely. That's when I noticed the truck behind me. It was an old pickup, maybe from the 1980s, dark blue with patches of rust. It had appeared in my rearview mirror sometime in the last few miles, though I couldn't remember seeing it before. In the empty landscape, any vehicle would have been visible from a long distance. The truck maintained a steady distance of about 100 yards behind me. When I slowed down to look for a place to turn around, it slowed down too. When I sped up, it matched my pace exactly. After about 10 minutes of this, I started feeling uneasy. There was something deliberate about how the truck was following me. In rural areas like this, it was normal for faster drivers to pass slower ones. But this truck made no attempt to get closer or signal that it wanted to pass. I tried flashing my brake lights to indicate that I was lost and might need to make sudden stops or turns. The truck's headlights flashed back once, but it continued following at the same distance. Finally, I saw a dirt road branching off to the right. It looked like it might lead to a farm or ranch where I could turn around. I slowed down and put on my turn signal, but at the last second, I decided to test something. Instead of turning, I kept driving straight. In my rearview mirror, I saw the truck slow down and put on its turn signal too, exactly mimicking my movements. When I didn't turn, it didn't turn either. It just fell back into formation behind me. My mouth went dry. This wasn't coincidence. Someone was deliberately following me. I tried to get a better look at the driver, but the truck's windshield was tinted and the afternoon sun created too much glare. I couldn't see anything except a vague silhouette behind the wheel. For the next 20 miles, the truck stayed exactly 100 yards behind me. I tested it several times, varying my speed, making false signals, even stopping completely for 30 seconds. The truck mirrored every action. The road began to climb into hills, becoming more winding and remote. I passed a few rundown houses, but they looked abandoned. No power lines, no mailboxes, no signs of life. Just empty structures slowly being reclaimed by the surrounding forest. My gas gauge was getting low. I'd used more fuel than planned on the detour, and there hadn't been any gas stations on this remote road. I needed to find civilization soon, or I'd be stranded out here with whoever was following me. That's when I crested a hill and saw a small town spread out in the valley below. It looked mostly deserted, but there were a few buildings that seemed maintained, including what looked like a gas station. As I drove down into the town, I noticed the truck had fallen back further, maybe 200 yards now. I couldn't see it clearly in my mirrors, but I knew it was still there. The gas station was old but functional. An elderly man came out to help me, and I felt a rush of relief at seeing another human being. I filled up my tank while he cleaned my windshield, trying to act normal while keeping an eye on the road behind me. "You're pretty far off the beaten path," the man said. "Don't get many strangers through here." "I got lost," I told him, trying to get back to the interstate. He gave me directions to rejoin Highway 26, which was only about 15 miles away through the hills. But as he talked, I saw the blue truck roll slowly past the gas station. It didn't stop, didn't even slow down, just cruised through town and disappeared around a bend in the road. The driver was wearing a baseball cap pulled low over his face, and he turned to look directly at me as he passed, even from a distance. Even with his features hidden in shadow, I could feel the intensity of that stare. It made my skin crawl. "Who was that?" I asked the old man. He followed my gaze down the road where the truck had gone. "Don't know. Never seen that truck before." He paused, studying my face. "You having some kind of trouble?" I almost told him everything, but I was afraid I'd sound paranoid. Instead, I just said I thought someone might be following me. "Well," he said, "road out of town only goes two ways. If someone wants to follow you, they'll be pretty obvious about it." He was right. The road I needed to take wound through hills for 15 miles before reaching the highway. If the truck was waiting for me, I'd see it. I thanked him, paid for the gas, and got back in my car. As I drove out of town, I watched my mirrors carefully. For the first few miles, the road behind me stayed empty. I started to relax, thinking maybe the truck had belonged to a local who'd just been curious about a stranger. Then, as I rounded a sharp curve, I saw it parked on the shoulder about half a mile ahead. The blue pickup was just sitting there, engine running, waiting for me to pass. I slowed down as I approached, trying to see the driver more clearly. But just before I reached the truck, it pulled back onto the road and resumed following me, maintaining that same 100-yard distance. My hand started shaking on the steering wheel. This was no coincidence. Someone was stalking me on this remote road, far from any help. I drove as fast as I dared on the winding road, but the truck kept pace effortlessly. It was clearly being driven by someone who knew these roads well, while I had to slow down for every sharp curve and steep grade. When I finally reached Highway 26, I turned right toward Burns without signaling, hoping to lose my pursuer. But the truck turned too, falling into formation behind me again. Traffic was heavier on the main highway, and I thought about pulling over at the next rest stop or truck stop, where there would be other people around. But every time I moved toward an exit, the truck moved too, staying right behind me. I realized that stopping might be exactly what this person wanted. Out here, even at a rest stop, I could be isolated and vulnerable. So I kept driving. For the next 2 hours, through Burns and Bend and over the Cascades, the blue truck stayed behind me, always at the same distance, always following my exact route. I called 911 on my cell phone, but when I tried to explain the situation, the dispatcher seemed skeptical. A truck following me on a public highway wasn't technically illegal, especially when I couldn't prove any threatening behavior. Has the driver attempted to force you off the road? Made any threatening gestures? Tried to ram your vehicle? No. But then I'd suggest driving to your local police station if you're concerned. But that was the problem. I wasn't going home. I was going to Emma's birthday party at my ex-wife's house in a residential neighborhood. I couldn't lead the stalker to a house full of children. As I reached the outskirts of Boys, I made a decision. Instead of going to the party, I drove straight to the main police station downtown. I pulled into the parking lot and sat there for 10 minutes, waiting to see if the truck would follow me. It didn't. The blue pickup drove slowly past the police station, the driver once again turning to stare directly at me. This time I could see more of his face under the baseball cap. Middle-aged, unshaven, with eyes that seemed to burn with a cold intensity. Then he was gone, disappearing into city traffic. I filed a report with the police, giving them the truck's description and license number. They took it seriously enough to increase patrols in my neighborhood for a few days, but they never found the vehicle or identified the driver. I missed Emma's party that day. By the time I felt safe enough to leave the police station, it was evening, and the celebration was over. When I called to explain, my ex-wife was furious and Emma cried. But I know I made the right choice, because for the next month, I kept seeing that blue truck, parked across from my office building, idling outside Emma's school during pickup time, following me to the grocery store, always staying just far enough away to avoid confrontation. The police couldn't do anything. The truck never violated any traffic laws, never got close enough to be considered harassment, just a constant, menacing presence in my life. Then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. I haven't seen the blue truck in 2 months now, but I still take different routes every day. I still check my mirrors obsessively. I still feel like someone might be watching me, because I know the truth now. That wrong turn didn't just cost me 3 hours and a tank of gas. It led me past someone who decided I was worth following, someone who learned where I work, where my daughter goes to school, where I buy groceries, someone who might just be waiting for the right moment to finish whatever he started on that empty road. I've never told anyone the worst part, not even the police. As the truck passed the police station that day, as the driver turned to look at me one last time, I saw him smile, and I saw that he was holding a phone, taking pictures of my car, pictures of my license plate, pictures of me. He's still out there somewhere, and he knows exactly where to find me.